That's right. It is the national championship game.
Look at that trophy.
Oh, it's so
Damn.
big. All right, guys. This is it. Pause. This is it. This is our last preview of the entire year. So if you guys like our content up to this point, please consider liking the video and subscribing. So we appreciate it so much. We'll be here all off season talking about stuff, but it's still the postseason. It's not the off season. It's still postseason. We got it. The two teams of destiny, as CD had mentioned before. It is Michigan versus Washington. Washington catching 4.5 points. Washington just loves catching points, right? And they love they love it because it doesn't matter to them at all. JJ McCarthy versus Michael Penix, number 9 on 9, 9 on 9 crime. What? I'll let you start.
Here's the deal. This is a very hard game to break down in a sense of predictions because it's not a hard game to talk about because of the completely contrasting styles that's going to be happening with these two games. The problem is predicting when both of these teams have been super successful at their styles, who wins out, who prevails, how do you control that? And obviously it's going to be all about controlling pace and tempo of this game. If this game is moving into a shootout and it's going to be in the 30s, right? Obviously you favor Washington. If it's going to be in the teens in low 20s, like we saw in the Rose Bowl with Michigan, they can play their game and play their football, run the ball, and obviously take shots with McCarthy when they need to. It's going to favor Michigan for sure. I don't know. It's awesome. Both these teams obviously played super well in their games. Well, I don't know about super well, but they won their games.
Washington played, I thought, their best game all season.
But both of them had special teams blunders, right? Washington had the muff punt. Michigan had their own problems on the punting unit on both sides.
And extra points.
They got to find a guy in 7 days to be able to catch a punt, right? That's priority number one. I'm sure they have somebody that can do it. AJ Henning probably could have done it. He's over at Northwestern now.
See it.
Sucks for them, but yeah, it's awesome now. Two quarterbacks here that a lot of hype, a lot of NFL hype. Obviously, JJ was a 5-star quarterback himself. Obviously, very talented arm runner, yada, yada, yada. Michael Penix is everyone's man crush right now in college football, NFL draft circles. With the way he spins the football and throws it with timing, anticipation, and accuracy is really incredible. I get it. He's got those offensive weapons. I get it. He's got a good O-line. But he's also doing this off platform with guys in his face, moving around, navigating the pocket, throwing the tight windows. And yes, his receivers are making great plays and making them look good, but he is still doing such a good job. And the problem is here. Get my pick. Can I get my pick right now?
Yeah, you can give your pick.
I talked about it last game. Michigan, I know they're on the team of destiny. I know I love to ride them, and I think I'm going to regret this, but I'm going to ride the hot hand. I think what Michael Penix and Roma Dunze and crew there is doing offensively is just unstoppable. In college football, when you can go 3 wide and be able to pick your matchup and just exploit it on every down, it is such an advantage. This is the only team in the playoffs, maybe Texas excluded, but like the only team where I just feel so good, even if it's 3rd and 12, okay? Like I fully believe they're going to complete this pass for a first down, whether it happens or not, and more times than not, probably doesn't, but I just feel so good about them whenever it is. And to me, I think they can really blow this game out, blow it open, and be able to play their style of football because in 2023, now 2024, college football, right? Like offense wins out. Elite offense controls tempo and dictates the time and style of a game. And I think if Washington can do that and to play up to their standards like they did last game and against Oregon, right, they can do that. They can win this football game.
Yeah, and I don't hate that at all. I think here's what I'll also say too. I'll play a little devil's advocate right here. Michael Penix played what I thought was his best game all year. Those receivers played their best game all year. They also, as one of the most penalized teams in the country, only 5 penalties for 39 yards, which is good for them. Good for them. For a while,
Didn't Texas have a good amount of penalties as well?
Texas had like 10 plus penalties, right? Like you were to tell me who's a more penalized team before the game, I would have told you, oh, it's got to be Washington. They're one of the most penalized teams in the country. And that's costed them at times. It's caused them to be in some close games. I really genuinely believe Washington played their best game that they have played all year, right? I know you talked about the muff punt. Sure. I still believe that. I think Michigan did not play their best game all year, and they still beat Alabama. That's what I look at.
Yep.
And here's the other thing, too. Texas was running the ball very, very effectively. 7 yards a clip almost between their two running backs. And they only touched the ball 18 times combined. You're telling me that Michigan, okay, here it is. Texas runs the ball about 51% of the time, 51% of the plays, right? Michigan's willingness to run the ball at 59% per clip or 59% per game. That's like top 20 in the country. And there's teams that out there that run the triple option and run option spread option type offenses that run the ball more, right? Like they are committed to running the ball, and I think they will stick to it, right? Now I think Washington's got some really nice pieces on the edge. I think Braylon Trice is a monster, right? I think Michigan does. I'll fade you. Now, here's what I'm rooting for, right? You're looking at a guy that's got Michigan plus 1025 to win the national championship, and you're also looking at a guy that hedged with Washington plus 4.5. So, what do you think I'm rooting for? You're probably thinking, oh, well, he's rooting for Washington to cover, Michigan to win, right? That is exactly what I'll be rooting for. All right. But here's what it is. I'll take Michigan minus 4.5, and I'll take Michigan to win. Michigan is the least penalized team in the country. Washington is one of the most penalized teams in the country. On the biggest stage, I think it's going to come down to details, right? And are they going to get the same exact big plays from those receivers that they got against Texas? Maybe. They might. Roma Dunze might, he just might be different, man. I think he is different. And he might get some of those, right? But just give Will Johnson a couple plays. Mike Sammer's still in the nickel, a couple plays on Jalen McMillan, right? I also think Michigan's linebackers are faster.
Yep.
Right? I think
and I think deeper in the front seven there. Like Texas, we talked about is being a year or two away from actually having a legit college football championship roster, right? And not only your first 22s, but your two deeps.
Yeah, exactly. And I think Washington, they just came down with so much. Can they replicate it? And look, if they do, then we will know for sure that Washington deserved to win the national championship. Undoubtedly. Because if you're just doing that time and time and time again, it's
Oregon,
like
Texas, Michigan. That would
Oregon
be
twice.
so impressive. Yeah.
Yeah, like you're like, okay, like Washington, I think this whole time was the best team in the country because they had this elite quarterback that was just, I mean, darting. Like it was absurd. If you guys watching this video, I'm sure you guys watched the game. I mean, he was just absolutely pin missing guys. And what's hilarious is that like he was a transfer and this is a 6-year guy. You know, it's like both these teams, like we mentioned earlier, too, are like in a situation where their roster gets severely depleted after the season. So it is win now or win not for maybe a couple of years for both of these teams. And what's funny too is that both these teams are in the Big Ten next year. So we might see a rematch sooner than later. So I am super, super excited for this game. Things that I think will happen, Blake Corum having a monster game. Things I also think will happen, Roma Dunze will also have a very good game. All right. It's going to really come down to like, can Michigan get home? Right. I think these edges are a little bit better than Texas's edges. Not by a ton. I think they're a little bit better, a little bit more speed there. I think interior wise, maybe it's not as good, right? But the Dylan Johnson, if he's not 100%, like, can you rely on this run game? Like, they were not able to run the ball until they got Dylan Johnson going. And if he's not 100%, I don't know that they're going to be able to. There's going to be a lot of pressure on Michael Penix to do everything that he did last game. And there were a couple games this year where he did not do everything that he was asked. Look at Arizona State, right?
Flu game, but yes. Yeah.
Blue game, but yes. But like he just so I'm just asking all these Washington believers to be careful, right? Washington can totally do it. They're so capable of doing it. But I just think like if you were to simulate this game 100 times, I think Michigan covers the majority of them. So I will take Michigan to win and Michigan to cover.
Yeah, and here's the thing about this game that is contrary to last year's playoffs. Last year's playoffs, the semifinal games were awesome. They're super entertaining. Obviously, the Georgia Ohio State game, all-time classic, coming on the end there at New Year's, right? It was at literally midnight there, Eastern time, and then they missed a field goal to win. Obviously, the Michigan TCU game was back and forth, crazy game at the end there as well. The thing is, nobody gave TCU a chance to win this football game, right? And that it was obviously a blowout. This is a very good game. Washington has an absolute chance to win this game, which is why I'm picking them to win it. You mentioned though, it's going to be so hard for them to duplicate the success they had against Texas, against Oregon, but also like sometimes like when you're hot, man, like you're just unstoppable. We saw it with Joe Burrow, right? When they would get cooking and they had 3 wide receivers that they loved, running backs out of the backfield, tight ends, yada yada yada. They were unstoppable, right? Clemson had a damn good defense that year, and they just shredded them. Joe Burrow was unstoppable. Bama had a really good defense that year, and he just shredded them. Georgia was pretty damn good defensively there, and he just shredded them. And I'm not going to say this team is like the LSU team in 2019. Obviously, they can cement themselves as in a similar tier as them if they do win this football game, like I believe they will. But like when you have that hot of an offense right now and that hot of a quarterback who's as healthy as he's been since September, which when we saw him dotting guys up, right? He had that long break. We saw him using his legs in the running game, designed runs, all that good stuff, moving pockets, right? Extending plays and taking hits there at the end there. Yeah, it's just so hard to stop it. And here's the deal with Michigan, like they jump on you, or if Washington jumps on Michigan, it's 14-0 or 10-0 and 13-0. Like how quickly does Michigan abandon the run? I don't know if they will. I don't think they will. I don't think Jim Harbaugh will get bullied into playing out of his style and out of his comfort zone. But also like it's a dangerous game to play there with Washington. You can get really, really frisky. And if Michael Penix and Odunze and them they come out hot, they don't have to run the ball if they're just dotting people up, right? Obviously, it hurts Dylan Johnson. We'll see if he plays. I'm not too excited about it. I think it's going to be Tybo Rogers and Penix to carry the load. They'll get Bernard his touches in weird gimmicky ways as well. But yeah, I don't know. Do you think Washington has a defense to hold up against Michigan? And obviously, secondary, I like them, right? Pass rush. When it's third and long, I love Washington in this spot here. But on first and second down, can they win enough? And that's obviously why you're probably picking Michigan.
Ooh, I don't think they do. I don't think you do. I don't think they do. I don't think they have the man meat up front. I mean, if Bama didn't have the man meat up front, I don't think Washington does. You know, if Ohio State didn't have the man meat up front, if Alabama didn't have the man meat up front,
Yeah.
if Penn State didn't have the man meat up front, then you can't tell me that you believe going into this game that Washington does. Right?
Yeah.
That's and Michigan ran the ball well when they needed to. You know, it's not like they ran the ball at like 6 yards a clip against Ohio State or Penn State, but they ran the ball. They only ran the ball in the second half against Penn State because they could, and then against Ohio State they ran the ball. Okay, they ran the ball enough, and
Yeah.
it was effective, and they stuck to it. That's the key. Texas did not stick to it. Michigan stuck to the run in all of those games, in every single one of those games, those big games. They stuck to the run. That's credit to Sharon Moore and the staff there. The one alarming stat that I'll give, um, and look, a lot of this has to do with context as well, so it doesn't tell a full story, but let me paint a picture for you. First half points, okay, scored offensively. Washington, right? They're third in the country, averaging 23.8, almost 24 points every first half. That's absurd. Michigan in the first half averages 19.1, 14th in the country. That's really good. Washington in the second half, significant drop off, right? You're looking at only 13.9 points per game. It's good enough for top 50, right? Because, you know, you can only, I mean, no matter what kind of play calling you get, you're going to get some scoring plays with Michael Penix in this offense. But if you're telling me like coaching matchups here, right? You would think on paper like this is pretty even. Like Kalen DeBoer, a guy that doesn't lose, Ryan Grubb, who's a great offensive coordinator, and Jim Harbaugh on staff, who also has done a great job. That stat right there kind of tells me that, you know, Ryan Grubb, it takes a second for them to get going, you know, maybe some fourth quarter magic kind of stuff. Uh, it also tells me that they blew out a lot of teams too, right?
Early in the year for sure. But
Yeah,
they've been
but
playing.
so did Michigan, right?
Yeah.
That's the other side of that as well. So and Michigan, they had almost no drop off, scoring 18.4 points per game, good enough for 18th in the country. So to me, that tells me that Michigan, they come out with a nice script and they do well, they stick with it. And then the second half, they come out with a nice script and then it works and they just stick with it, right? And against Bama, that wasn't necessarily the case, right? They had to come up with some big plays in the fourth quarter, but uh, I just think if Washington can't figure things out in that third quarter, that middle eight, if Michigan can find ways to win that middle eight, I think they win. And I'll give the slight coaching advantage to Michigan, which sounds crazy because I know Kalen DeBoer doesn't lose. Again, he doesn't lose. Like that's his whole thing. He's lost 2 games ever at Washington as a head coach. That's crazy, right? So just I'll give the slight coaching advantage to Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah, no, I think this is going to be an all time. I think this is going to be a very fascinating game. I wouldn't say all time classic. I'll wait till the end there, to see how it actually plays out. But I think this can make a really really interesting game, especially in the first 30 minutes to see what happens. This is going to be a game. I know you got to get your picks out for Dawson's Diner, but it's going to be one where you kind of want to live bet. Right, if Michigan comes out and they're really able to
Well, I won't
physically
be live.
impose their
I will
will.
not be live betting because I already have my hedge Washington plus 4.5, which is
Yes.
not Dustin. I'm not advising you to take that. If you have a Michigan ticket, you might want to think about it. If you have a Michigan ticket as juicy as plus 1025, which, you know, if you're following the show back in June, you might have gotten, but what are you going to do?
Well, that's the thing. And the reason why you're hedging is because you actually believe that Washington has a chance to win a football game.
Correct.
Which is all the more credit to Kalen DeBoer and staff there. But yeah, because it can really if Penix is coming out and lighting them up like on that first drive or even that second drive, like and Michigan is stalling offensively and McCarthy gets hit on third down or yada yada yada, and Michigan can't get to Washington, it's going to be really interesting. I do want to mention something real quick about Michigan's defense. They've just really overhauled the way they have done things. And to be honest, what gives me a little bit concerned is, yes, we saw how well they matched up against Bama because Bama's strength is their run game and their O line and get Milrow moving and being able to have time to set up for deep plays. While Michigan's secondary is good, I think not elite. And I don't think I like Will Johnson. I like some of the guys back there for sure, but the strength is that front seven for sure. But they also, this defense was built to beat Ohio State, right? The Ohio State teams with CJ Stroud, with
Yeah.
Marvin Harrison,
Yeah, it was.
with Emeka Ibuka, with JSN and Garrett Wilson, and all those guys you remember that are playing fantastically in the NFL. Like, right, it takes you back to the COVID year, right? With Jim Harbaugh there, goes to his brother John Harbaugh and says, "Hey, I need to overhaul my defensive staff. How do you guys stop elite NFL offenses?" And he's like, "Well, here's Jesse Minter or Mike McDonald," and he takes Mike McDonald, right? He plays fantastic. They beat Michigan. They beat Ohio State for 2 years. He goes back to the Ravens. They get Jesse Minter in here. They beat him again. And this defense and this scheme is just really diverse. It's really interesting. They come up with crazy blitz and stunts, and they really get after a quarterback and confuse a guy. The thing is Michael Penix has been around, and he has seen a lot of offenses or defenses. He's played against Michigan before, I believe, when he was at Indiana, although that was COVID year. I don't know for sure.
Yeah, but Michigan was like bad that year. They went like
And then he
two
was
and
hurt
four
the
or
year
something.
after. So whatever it is, like Michael Penix, he's also seen a lot of defenses, which I think it helps him more than it helped Jalen Monroe, who you saw could not get a good snap and could not read the defense or adjust or really do anything in that pocket that was always collapsing on him. I felt like it. But yeah, it's really interesting. That another thing that's like Michigan's also kind of prides himself on being able to beat a team that's constructed the way Washington's offense is. But also I will say, like, take you back to the game, right? Michigan and Ohio State. That was a pretty darn good game. And I thought Kyle McCord played well enough to win that game. Marvin Harrison obviously dominated. Roma Dunze can do the same here to Michigan. But obviously the difference there is that Trayvon Henderson, right? Like he's a guy that Dylan Johnson could be, and to get him some tough yards, or at least try to establish a run when they needed to. And I thought Ohio State moved the ball well, better than anybody else did all year on Michigan on the road there in Ann Arbor. So we'll see here though. But I cannot wait. I cannot wait.